Hi, I'm Barry Ostrowski. At RWJ Barnabas Health, we believe that everyone needs to be informed about the important healthcare issues affecting their lives. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, PSE&G, committed to improving New Jersey's economy and strengthening its communities. Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey. NJM Insurance Group. The law firm of Gibbons, P.C. International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. And by the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media. And by Insider NJ.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Welcome to a very special edition of One-on-One. I'm Steve Adubato. Recently, I sat down with Republican candidate for governor, Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno, and we discussed the issues that matter most to New Jersey voters. Here now is that conversation. Lieutenant Governor, let's go right to property taxes. By the way, we had thousands of questions that came to us from on a variety of platforms. This one comes from AM 970, NJTV, Facebook, Twitter, other places. Property taxes. Describe your plan in more detail.
Well, it's very easy. The number one problem in New Jersey is property taxes. I can go to any room in the state and ask people what's the number one problem they have, and it's property taxes. They can't afford to live here in New Jersey anymore. They're all planning their exits, and we need to address the number one problem that is on their minds. Now, my property tax plan would simply cap, if you will, property taxes at about 5% of household income. That means basically, for your listeners, $800 in savings on average.
What happens if it goes over?
If what goes over?
If it goes over that amount. I mean, if the town says,
you
know what?
It would be a good thing if they got more than $800.
No. Okay. It caps, I want to understand something.
Right.
It caps the increase?
No. 5%. You never pay more than 5% of your household income for your property taxes.
Never pay more?
Right. Never pay more.
And what about if the locality says, you know what, we need more for schools, we need more for transportation? What happens then?
The school gets reimbursed. They send a bill, if you will, to Trenton, and Trenton comes back and reimburses you for the difference in the amount.
You say it's the number one issue in the state, property tax?
Absolutely. I defy anybody to show me any information that says anything different. People can't afford to live here anymore. I mean, I've been here for 8 years, Steve, and bringing businesses here for 8 years. And the number one problem I hear from the people that work in those businesses is, I can't afford to be here anymore. They're moving to Pennsylvania, they're moving to New York. When they get to be my age, 58, they start to plan on how they're going to move out of New Jersey. This 5% of household income, this average savings of $800 per year will allow them to stay here. You know, if $800 might not be a lot for Phil Murphy because he's a multimillionaire, but $800 for the people that I've met over the last 8 years is a lot of money. Let's
talk school funding. These questions came from our friends at NJ.com, from Insider NJ.com, Facebook, Twitter, other places, and it deals with school funding. And frankly, the school funding issue, from the state money to local school districts, has a lot to do with property taxes. Describe your school funding plan.
Well, the school funding plan starts with the 5% of household income. Really quite simple. We are going to help people who need the most help now with the 5% of household income. Save everybody about $800 of the school property taxes right now, the first day we walk into office. Why do I think that's going to work? Because we pulled a page out of a Democrat playbook in Massachusetts and Illinois. And the school funding plan is really pretty simple. Let's just make sure we're getting our money's worth. Let's go back into these districts. Let's make sure every penny that we spend is being spent for the kids, giving them a thorough and efficient education. You know, I haven't heard anything from Phil Murphy except that he's going to fully fund the school funding formula. Look,
what's wrong with that?
Well, I think
it's the law.
It's a great idea if you could afford it. The question is, how do you afford all of the things that Phil Murphy has promised? He's promised free pre-K education, Everybody I know would love to have free pre-K. I mean, I had to pay for my son when I went to work because I was a two-income family. I had to pay for my sons to go to pre-K because I could afford it. That was great. But everybody in New Jersey wants free pre-K. But how do they pay for it?
But what about those who can't afford it? What about those who are on a lower economic scale, if you will, and just can't afford that pre-K? And we know how important pre-K is to a child's development. Go ahead.
Well, we're already funding it. We've already begun. We had pilot programs in place for years, and then we just added some more money to it this past year.
About $25 million,
Yeah, $25 million. So that's a start. The question is a question of priorities. In my mind, if you make New Jersey more affordable by keeping taxes low, then more people will be able to stay here. They'll be able to get better jobs here, and they'll be able to afford to live here and not have to move out of New Jersey.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned pre-K. We're involved in an initiative that tries to raise awareness around issues and challenges that babies and infants are facing this, birth to 3.
Right.
By the way, the initiative is called Right from the Start, NJ, that we're involved in with some other folks. Is there more state funding, let's say, reimbursing child care centers?
Oh,
right.
okay.
Just from a public policy point of view, we've had legislators come out and say, we don't fund enough to those to folks in terms of reimbursement for child care at that age.
Don't disagree at all. As a working mom, I had to sometimes make a decision. If my babysitter didn't show up, do I go to work or does my husband go to work? And it really was a rock, paper, scissors, shoot kind of thing. I think we need, so that mostly working mothers, most of us need affordable, reliable daycare. And one of the ways that we make sure we do that is give tax credits. Now, we have flexible spending programs. I took advantage of a flexible spending program, saved me a lot of money over time. But I think we need to do better to make sure that our working mothers have what they need. And one of the other ways to do it is, quite frankly, Steve, is to make sure they can afford to pay their taxes. It all comes back to the same issue.
Taxes?
We need to fix this election, Steve, is going to be a referendum on taxes. And if anybody
Property
thinks
taxes, income taxes,
taxes. Phil Murphy has promised an additional $75 billion worth of spending. We added it up. It's on our website, kim4nj.com. And just the other day, he added another 200 or 400 million because of his plan for free community college education. It keeps going up and up and up. He's admitted to $1 billion worth of additional taxes. That's one promise I think he'll keep. But I believe he's going to spend more than that. And people in New Jersey understand one thing, and that's their pocketbook. It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. It's an issue of whether or not they can stay here, keep the roof over their heads, and food on their table.
By the way, Ambassador Murphy will be joining us in the second half hour, or the half hour of this. The other half hour of this program, he'll have an opportunity to not just defend himself, but make his case and talk about his concerns about the lieutenant governor. And a very civil discourse. We appreciate that. By the way, I'm going to ask him the same question. Your family, describe it.
My family is fabulous. I moved to New Jersey after moving all around the country because my husband's family was born and raised here, and I knew my family wasn't going to move around the country. We had to look for jobs. I know what happens if you lose your job and you have to leave a state. I know what happens to the family. I know what happens to a community. We need to make sure families stay together and they stay here in New Jersey. And the only way to make sure that happens, quite frankly, is if we lower property taxes in New Jersey. That's really the ongoing problem. So I'm a proud first lieutenant in the Air Force. The ultimate public school education is the United States Air Force Academy, and he went to a public school in Monmouth County. The second child is now about to graduate from college. He's finishing his last year of college, and he already has a job going to work in the city. And then the last child is 17. He's the ultimate equalizer. He keeps your feet firmly planted on the ground.
Hardest job in the world, being a mom or being governor?
Now, that's a close call.
I'm just going to say.
I'm telling you right now, the hardest job in the world is being a mother.
Just checking.
There's no doubt, because you're a working mom, I'm a working mom, and they don't care what you do during the day. They want to be, their laundry needs to be done, their clothes need to be folded, and their food needs to be on the table.
Lieutenant Governor, I'm just saying, being a dad's challenging as well, but point well taken. How about this one? Pensions.
Yes.
We've had a lot of conversations about public employee pensions. There was a reform effort that took place several years ago. Republican governor that you know well, Chris Christie, and the Democrats in the legislature did this. So these questions came from files from NJTV News, from WNET, from AM 970, everyone, including, by the way, thanks folks who follow us on Twitter. You see it right there. So many great questions. People were simply asked, how would you deal with, solve, improve the pension crisis in the state of New Jersey?
Right. Quite frankly, the first thing I would do is treat it honestly. Anybody who says this pension isn't broken is lying to you. Anybody who says that they can fully fund the pensions in New Jersey is lying to you.
Why lying?
Well, because they're lying. Everybody knows. You could sit down with the NJEA, as I have.
The New Jersey Education Association.
Thank you. And sit down with them and say, look, you know your pension isn't funded. You're hiring teachers right now and telling them they're going to have a pension when that pension will not be there. We need to sit down and talk thoughtfully about it and honestly and respectfully about it. And there is a plan. Now, I think we also have to separate things out. The law enforcement pensions are almost fully funded. I think they
Why do you separate them from teachers?
Because the teachers and CWA and other public workers,
Communication Workers of America,
right, are a little more underfunded, a little less funded. So I think the law enforcement pensions are almost funded.
Right.
There was a deal almost this summer to separate them out and let them manage their own pensions. Let them do that if they want to. It's their pension. They should manage it the way they want to, so long as the taxpayers aren't on the hook for it. And then we need to sit down with the teachers. And I told this to them when I went to talk to them about their endorsing me for governor. I said, look, let's sit down and talk about this problem and fix it. Let's fix it once and for all. They'd already endorsed Phil Murphy.
No, I know that, but
they endorsed Phil Murphy before they talked to me.
That's their right, just like it is any other organization. But that being said, by the way, to disclose, the NJA is an underwriter of our programming here on public broadcasting. But I also want to clarify this. There has been a commitment about the state fully funding the pension situation and underfunding it for years and years and years. Many said Governor Christie has done, not many said, it's a fact. He has spent more than many other governors together. But we're still way behind, but still underfunded. What is wrong with simply saying the state's going to do its job?
Well, the state should do its job, but the problem is paying for it. So the question becomes, how do you, so the pension payment is $5 billion in pension payment and another $10 billion in health care. That's $15 billion. We have a budget of
Meaning the whole?
No, that's what we owe.
That's the annual.
If we make a full pension payment
that's
next
how
year,
much?
It's $5 billion for the pension and another $10 billion for health
by the way,
care.
it could be 30, 40, 50 billion dollars in the whole
Oh, it's
total.
more than that.
It's more than that?
Yeah.
And what happens if it doesn't get resolved 10 years from now, 15 years?
Well, that's why it's going to be resolved. That's why it's going to be resolved.
What would you do?
I would sit down in the room and negotiate like management and labor should negotiate. We should pull out the Tom Byrne, for example, pension reform package, take a look at it. If you, Tom Byrne and Healy, and it's online, you can get it. Or even pull Phil Murphy's pension package from 2006 when he did it for Governor Cody and take some of those recommendations.
But name one, respectfully, Lieutenant Governor, to say we're going to sit and negotiate, that's great.
Right.
One concrete idea that would improve the situation.
Oh, easy. Go to generics. On the healthcare side, go to generics.
Instead of prescription drugs?
Right. Just require, instead of having the gold platinum standard for healthcare benefits, let the labor union take a look at where they could find savings in healthcare. I'm told, and the Byrne Commission says, we could save $2 billion. Take that $2 billion and put it in the pension. Right there.
By the way, if you want to engage Lieutenant Governor, you can find her website to continue that conversation. I'll remind folks watching this is a one-hour special we're doing on New Jersey's next governor. Lieutenant Governor is here right now. She's the Republican candidate for governor. Her Democratic opponent, Ambassador Phil Murphy, will be joining us as well. We're being seen on a variety of PBS platforms in the region, on radio as well, on Verizon, Fios, and we're also seeing nationally, you can see us nationally on C-SPAN. Real quick, I'm going to a couple other topics. Healthcare. Who knows what is going to go on in Washington as it relates to the repeal of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, or not? Where do you see New Jersey right now in terms of the way we are providing health care for those who need it the most? And to what degree are you concerned about the president continuing on this track to repeal and replace Obamacare? Well,
I'm very concerned about where we're going in the future. Of course I am, because there's been discussion about pulling the rug out from people that have insurance in New Jersey that rely on that insurance. So back in a couple years ago when we agreed to the waiver, we signed up 530,000 more people to the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
We can't pull the rug out from underneath them. So I'm confident that people are good and working in good faith to make sure that our 530,000 additional insureds will get the insurance that they need, that they will have pre-existing coverage, pre-existing condition coverage, and also afford to pick their own doctors and make it an affordable plan, and we need to do that. And that's where we need to go to our congressmen. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on, and make sure that they do that in Washington. And it's just not the president. It's everyone.
Congress as well.
Right.
Republicans in Congress.
Right.
The Democrats don't want to repeal
well,
it.
and balanced government can sometimes be a problem, as you see. And in New Jersey, if we don't have a Republican governor, we will not have balanced government. We will have imbalanced government. We'll have the legislature in the hands of the Democrats, and the governor's office in the hands of the Democrats, and there'll be no check and balance. And I think people in New Jersey like divided government.
They do?
I think
Even
so.
if it produces gridlock?
Well, in New Jersey, I don't think it has produced gridlock.
People will decide.
They will decide.
But here's another interesting issue connected to that. So Donald Trump, you were here a few months back when you were running in the primary. We had an interesting conversation about Donald Trump. You've had a few more months to examine his presidency. Your views, Lieutenant Governor, on the president's presidency and how well he is doing, particularly for people like the folks in Jersey?
You know, I'm looking at how Washington impacts New Jersey. A governor from New Jersey is going to have to go to Washington and work with that president. So from my point of view, we have 1 trillion reasons to get along with Donald Trump, meaning the money he's promised to put into infrastructure. I like what he's done with regulations. We did it with regulations here in New Jersey. We need to be more business friendly, not just in New Jersey, but also nationally. We need to be more competitive. I like some of what I'm seeing in terms of taxes. I don't want to see anything that hurts New Jersey, and there's been some conversation about changing the tax form that would hurt New Jersey. But the fact that we're changing our tax structure, anything that helps grow our economy here in New Jersey, anything this president does that helps the people of New Jersey is something I'm going to fight for.
In that spirit, as it relates to DACA, immigration, these dreamers, the DACA decision for these students, not just students, there are 22,000 New Jersey residents. People call them kids. Some of them are very young, some of them are 20, 22, 24, different ages. The president saying at first, hey, listen, they got to go. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, they got to go. We don't know where that's going to go. Where do you think it should go?
Well, I think we need to honor the deal we made with the Dreamers. I mean, we can't kick out. We shouldn't kick out.
But why is there even a discussion? Sorry for interrupting, Lieutenant Governor. Why is there even a discussion about that?
Why? I don't know. You'll have to ask Washington. I think it's because they haven't.
It's not Washington. It's the Trump presidency, the White House.
No, I think it's Washington. I think it's both sides. I think that immigration is a problem on the federal side that has not been fixed in years. It goes well beyond this president and, frankly, the president before that. I think it's a problem that needs to be fixed. I think all of us have to go to our congressional leaders and tell them what I've said. There's 20,000 or so Dreamers in New Jersey. We're not going to be destroying families in New Jersey. They didn't have a choice about coming to New Jersey. They should be. I don't think the right word is saved, but they need to be. The problem needs to be addressed in Washington. And
the immigration issue.
The immigration
What
issue.
about those who are the rule of law? Hey, it's the rule of law. They're not supposed to be here. President Obama had the executive order. It was supposed to run out. Runs out. They got to go. Rule of law, you say, and you know law better than most.
I've said it many times. It's 20,000 people in New Jersey who came here as a family member, whether it was at 2 or now that they're 30. That we will not tear apart. We will never advocate for that kind of draconian response.
Right.
What the president has allowed Congress to do, and quite frankly, I think there's 800,000 leverages, because that's the number across the country, for the Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, to deal with this problem. And I think that's the leverage we need to finally deal with this problem. Because why should people be worried about whether they're going to be deported or not if we can fix it? And I choose to believe, Steve, that we will fix it because we are good people here, not just in New Jersey, but across this country.
Yes or no to, by the way, this came from NJTV News, our Facebook site there, AM 970, WNET, FiOS, other places. The question kept coming up, sanctuary cities. Where is the Lieutenant Governor on sanctuary cities?
Very clear. I'm a former federal law enforcement official. I'm a former state law enforcement official.
You're a sheriff as well?
I'm a former sheriff. And I believe sanctuary states are bad for law enforcement all
Cities?
the way around. Well, my opponent has said he wants sanctuary state. He wants to make the entire
What would be wrong with that?
state. Because it puts law enforcement at risk. Just for starters, it puts law enforcement at risk. It's not going to stop federal immigration officers from coming in and enforcing federal law. We don't, as the governor, and this is where my legal background comes in, I suppose, and my law enforcement background, we don't have the authority to stop immigration officials from coming in and doing whatever the law, federal law, allows them to do. So they're going to come in. All it does is put a target on the backs of the people in New Jersey who believe that they're being protected because of sanctuary cities or state. And second, I think it put our law enforcement officers completely at risk.
You don't like this?
Oh, I think it's just a terrible policy. I think if you want to fix immigration, go to Washington and fix the immigration problem. And if we don't, we're putting everyone at risk. The people who will be led to believe they're safe in New Jersey as a result of sanctuary state, and law enforcement officials. And the one that really scares me is law enforcement officials, because what you're really saying is our local law enforcement officials will not provide backup for other law enforcement officials. Unacceptable.
To be clear, we're going to have Ambassador Murphy. He'll have an opportunity to talk about his immigration policy, about sanctuary cities, states, et cetera, the other part of this 1 hour special. Lieutenant Governor, how about this? Legalizing marijuana. This question came again from so many folks, but particularly NJ.com. It was flooded with hundreds of questions around this question, legalizing marijuana.
Well, the only explanation I've had from Phil Murphy about why we need to legalize marijuana is to generate revenue. And let me tell you that I can think of any number of ways to generate revenue that are not going to include legalizing marijuana and putting a whole generation of children at risk. I have a 17-year-old son. I'm not saying he does marijuana, but I'm saying that if we legalize marijuana, he's going to have the opportunity. And I don't want to give him that opportunity. If there's any risk that marijuana is a gateway drug, then I think we can find other places to generate revenue. In fact, I'm sure of it. And to go first to legalizing marijuana in order to balance a budget to pay for any number of the $75 billion worth of extra spending Phil Murphy wants to do, I think is irresponsible.
Well, who says first? And respectfully, who says first? Say someone says we look at a bunch of other things and ultimately we go, you know what? A lot of other states have done it. We're going to consider it. It would potentially bring in revenue. Not a bad idea.
Phil Murphy said it.
I know, but
Phil Murphy said it. I mean,
he said it first, like that was the primary part of his platform?
Sure. Ask him in a half an hour. You will see.
I will.
He said he thinks that one of the ways to balance this budget and pay for all of these things he's promised all of those people in the primary is to legalize marijuana. I say we audit Trenton. We stop the State House renovation. We find...
The one that the governor wants?
We stop the State House renovation.
That's a bad idea?
That's a $300 million price tag right there.
You disagree with the governor on that?
Yes.
You know something about transportation because you drive on the roads of New Jersey, and we're congested, and we've got problems. Can I ask you a question about, I will ask you a question, AM 970 and Twitter and Facebook and others on this one, FiOS as well. The question that kept coming in was the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. How much impact does it play in our life, and what would you do as governor? Because the governors of both states, Cuomo in New York, whoever the governor is going to be in New Jersey, big impact on the Port Authority in our lives.
Well, it does have a big impact.
What would you do differently?
Well, what I do differently, I would continue to get New Jersey's fair share of what's going on. So I'll give you the one example, Bayonne Bridge. If we had not put $1 billion of Port Authority money into the Bayonne Bridge and raised it, a feat of engineering,
it's a big deal.
It really was amazing to see the bridge raised high enough to bring in the super tankers. If New Jersey had not fought to get the $1 billion to raise that bridge, the Port Authority would, the port would have been closed.
By the way, the port runs that bridge. We should be clear as to why this is an issue.
Oh, sure.
I just want to make sure people understand that. So what does that have to do with, so you're saying New Jersey gets the shaft?
I'm saying that we need to continue to fight to get our fair share. And if there's not a strong governor who understands the need to do something like raise the Bayonne Bridge so that we can continue bringing in Panama Canal super tankers, like you saw go through just last week, we're going to lose an entire ecosystem. and we can't afford to do that. So I don't think there's a lot of debate on that one. I think that any governor in New Jersey has to pay very close attention to making sure the money that goes to the Port Authority is spent on port projects or projects that have to do with transportation, and that New Jersey gets its fair share.
Yes or no on the Gateway Tunnel?
Absolutely.
It's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Critically important?
Yes.
Couple more, real quick. We have 1 minute left. Thank you, guys. By the way, I want to thank everyone for all the questions that you posed. Smart, thoughtful, making my job very, very easy. Probably the last question I want to ask you. The biggest reason why your governorship would be different than your opponent if he were elected is?
Taxes.
You're going to go back to taxes?
Taxes. This is a referendum in November on taxes. If you want a Goldman Sachs millionaire who has promised to raise your taxes, then vote for Phil Murphy. I'm a working mom, a former sheriff who's created jobs in this state for the last 8 years, who understands that if we increase taxes on the most taxed people in New Jersey, those jobs will go away. And I have pledged not to run again if I don't lower taxes in New Jersey.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our special New Jersey's Next Governor, where I'll be joined by the Democratic candidate for governor, Ambassador Phil Murphy. See you next week.
One on One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One on One with Steve Adubato has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, PSE&G, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, NJM Insurance Group, the law firm of Gibbons PC, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey.
NJM Insurance Company has been serving New Jersey policyholders for more than 100 years. But just who are NJM's policyholders? There are medical care and emergency management providers, service professionals, men and women that move us and the goods and products we use each day, and New Jersey's next generation of leaders, the people who make our state a great place to call home. NJM, we've got New Jersey covered.